Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Modern Web Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Ocel. I'm an architect at This.Labs. Today, we're very excited to sit down and talk with Shai Reznik about Qwik, the framework that is taking the internet by storm. Shai is a founder and CEO at HighRes.io, a community DevRel at Qwik, GDE for Angular, JS Israel founder, creator of the test-effective development methodology, and honestly, so much more. But we have to get going. Shai, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to sit here and talk to you about Qwik. I think Qwik is among the technologies and the frameworks that just everybody is talking about, and usually in positive terms. We just saw the state of JavaScript released, and I know that it's not the most perfect methodology out there, but even still, it was quite favorable for Qwik. Despite being used by, still a small fraction of developers, over 2/3 of respondents wanted to learn more about it, and over 85% of the people using it said they would keep using it in the future. So, talk to us a little bit about, how these are exciting times to be a Qwik developer and certainly to be a DevRel for Qwik.
Yeah. So first of all, let me adjust this thing. I just got a standing desk and I wanted to stand because more energy and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, exciting times, super exciting times. My story with Qwik was a surprising, story, let's say, of how I got into this. And I think my story, um, like hold the a shared story for other people who are discovering it. And at first they're like, oh, another framework, like I think I thought we were over this JavaScript fatigue phase of like every 5 minutes a new framework is getting born. But how I got into it, I actually, like 2 years ago, Mishko shared with me like a very first version of Qwik, and it was very innovative in terms of like, okay, what it does, but the developer experience wasn't optimal. So I was like, checking it out and saying, okay, giving some pointers or tips from as a developer, from my point of view as a just like a developer, and saying, okay, let's check it out in like a couple of months, like everybody is doing, because we have our own stuff to get done, in our day to day. And I think like 8 months ago or more, I invited Mishko to give a talk in JavaScript Israel, my meetup group, and about Qwik. And then he shared again about Qwik, and I saw a whole different developer experience story with like a different API, and I was like, interesting. And he said a bunch of things that made me think, that got me to a aha moment of like, that's interesting. Like I saw how this is completely different than everything that is on the market today. And I was like, so I started digging more into it, and I got more and more excited because I saw like, okay, like this opens up a new generation of web development frameworks, and it's not just like an improvement over what is currently in stock today with as an option. Um, and then I talked with Mishko, and he flew over here to Israel. We recorded a course about Qwik, and we did a workshop about deep dive into like the performance world, and like trying to build a solution for the current problems with the top of the industry here in Israel. And it was a very successful workshop, and people there got super super excited about it, because we actually built a pseudo framework around like trying to solve it. And after this workshop and after the responses and everything, we sat down and we talked, and I was like completely busy with my we're doing Angular consulting, and we're doing testing consulting, and providing courses and selling courses and stuff like that. and I just like got this like hunch about, hey, this is the future. So and I saw that, there, a key part in any framework is the community around it, and I thought I could contribute to that. So I talked with Mishko and the team, and decided to contribute, my time and helping out in building the community around it, because I wanted to see this thing, mature sooner, and in the right kind of way of building an inclusive community and a friendly community, especially regarding to other frameworks and other solutions. So I took inspiration from the lovely Angular community, which I'm still part of and still active in. Um, and like with regards to how people in the Angular community, like Angular developers and the Angular core team, are treating other solutions and other developers in a friendly way, in a very inclusive way. And this is what I wanted to see for Qwik. So it won't be about like we are better or we are or all that crap, but more of like, hey, we are all JavaScript developers. We're all in this game together, right? And we all try to make each other improve, and take inspiration from each other. So just like Qwik got a lot of inspiration from other frameworks, and other frameworks are now looking at Qwik to get inspiration about like how the future will look like. So that's basically how I got into Qwik and why I got excited. And when I shared with my team at Hi-Res that I'm going to contribute my extra time and in order to help out the team, they were like, why? Like, why should we invest even like resources now, when it's like it was before beta, it was like alpha and really still early. And I basically did this whole analysis of like a stock market analysis of why, like the gut, trying to explain the gut feeling that I had doing this like from the 90s as a web developer. And I've been here before many times, and seeing frameworks being successful, and frameworks maybe fail, and see all the factors that contributed to it. So I did this analysis of trying to explain my gut feeling about why I think Qwik symbolize a next generation of web development. And after I did this whole thing, they were like, "Oh, now we get it. Okay, we're on board." So yeah, that was so I did a lecture about it as well, like describing this like analysis and all that stuff. So we can talk about that if you want to,
Sure.
and the analysis of like the generation, how we got here, and what the future holds and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm surprised that your team didn't approach you and ask first, wait, what are you talking about free time? Where is this free time you suddenly have? But
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lack of sleeping for the past 8 months. Moreover, like working after hours and doing a lot of necessary things to to get this accelerated adoption happening.
it's
Um,
it's exciting to have that energy, right? I mean, that's the energy of being in something that you believe in, that excites you enough that can even be more enticing than sleep sometimes is a great
it's not,
feeling.
yeah, it's great feeling. Not healthy. Don't try it at home. But yeah, that is a great feeling. Like very exciting, very innovative. The working with the team in like from Builder.io, Mishko and Manu and Adam and Yoav and Steve and Sammy and other, like the team over there is like super experienced and smart, and they're working super fast, improving stuff that usually takes frameworks months to introduce. They're like solving it in weeks and even less. um so it's like being on a wild ride, and with super fun. And also, now that we are not like three people in the community, but thousands, and we created a program called Quick Heroes. So it's like like quick experts, but heroes. And we have lots of great people from the community that are contributing their time as well, and these are super smart people and super friendly as well. You begin in this like a friendly group of people helping out, and you learn from each other and such. So it makes it even more of a community that you want to keep going back to and help others, and get help to your issue and get encouragements, for stuff that you're doing. And no one is criticizing, lack of knowledge or stuff like that. And again, that's why it was important for me to be part of this like DevRel effort, to make sure that we keep this vibe, because this is the way to grow, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
What's super interesting about this to me is that, you know, if you look at something like backend development, I feel like, to really generalize things for the purpose of this conversation, monoliths were so popular forever. And then microservices started to gain popularity. And then immediately after microservices was serverless. Like it wasn't even like a full generation. It was just, here's a cool idea and now an evolution of an idea. And, in front end frameworks, we for a period there, it was Angular, it was Vue, it was React. Like that was the triumvirate. And there was the framework wars of the 2016, 2017 period where there was the JavaScript fatigue. It felt like everybody was taking another stab at this. But from 2018 onward, it really quieted down and it really was those three. But then all of a sudden you see like Gatsby and Next, and then we immediately pivot to a generation of like Qwik and Solid and Svelte. I know the timelines of some of these are a little bit off, but can you kind of explain why suddenly we're all inspired to sort of solve a new set of problems? Like what is it that we're, as a community and certainly as Qwik team, is responding to as a sort of an unfulfilled need or potential that sort of is prompting this innovation? What feels like suddenly to people, after it had been just kind of those big three for a long time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Lead to the analysis that I did, because as I said, I've been here from the 90s, and it's important. A lot of developers, most of the market are like developers from recent years, like I don't know, 5 6 years probably, and the old timers, okay, are like less than the majority. I'm feeling. So it's important to learn the history. Just like, I read this book by Ray Dalio, which is one of the most successful financial investors in the world. And this a book called Principles, where he explained how he used principles to analyze, like, the market, the stock market, and stuff like that. So basically, following the formula is like, know your past, analyze the history to understand the patterns from that history, project those patterns to the future, and try to assess where we are going. And 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 the why of the past will help you maybe bet on the right what in the future, right? So that's the process that I use to analyze intuitively, maybe, this investment, let's say. And it starts, as I said, from the 90s. So just a brief, we started from a static HTML websites. We then something got us to innovate there, because in the beginning it was just plain text, right, with links to each other, and that's it. Those were like the happy days of, like, modems and stuff like that. And I asked myself, what got us to innovate? And this is the same answer to answer your question. It's the same thing. Basically, there are a couple of forces that are, like actively operating in our field, and I will focus on two. Okay, the first one is UX, or user experience, and this is a broad topic, but for this discussion, we'll narrow it down to just like the time it takes the app or website to load, the time it takes for the interactivity, to run. and also not repeating yourself as a user, not refilling the same forms, not doing all that stuff. So this is the UX side. And on the other side, we have the DX, or developer experience, which is basically structure. Okay, so we want as developers something that it has a clear structure where things are going and it's the same consistent way, right? um, we want to do more with less code. Okay, so we just like one function that does lots behind the scenes, or that's part of it. And I forgot the third one, but basically these are like the probably like get reminded of it. But basically this is on the developer experience side. We want something that will be, and it's easy to learn. This is the third one. Like it's easy, or maybe simple to comprehend, or to get going faster from the get-go, like easier learning curve, and also easier to maintain, in terms of like once you have like a proper sized app, it's easier to maintain it. So this is on the developer experience side. So when you keep these two forces in mind and then analyze the past, you see that there's a trend, or there are patterns that keep repeating. For example, we moved from static HTML site into multi-page apps like PHP and ASP, even before .NET. Why did we do that? We did it because we wanted to, as developers, we didn't want to change 1,000 websites or 1,000 files, HTML files, when we changed the layout of the website, right? So we wanted something automatic. So we moved this repeating logic or repeating content to the database, and we had this rendering, server-side rendering. This was the OG server-side render that still happens, right, till this day. So it was a DX, or developer experience, that affected it, this move. But it had a negative effect on the user experience side, right? Because now users needed to wait for the database to load the content and for the server to render the content, and took more time than just serving static HTML. So long story short, okay, so if you mention, like, in my talk and the upcoming, like, Qwik course, which is going to be a free course about, like, introduction to Qwik, I actually show these lines on like an illustrative graph that you can see, like, when developer experience goes up, like in that transition that I just talked about, the user experience went down. And whenever the user experience went down, that's when the innovation started to happen. So then we moved from MPA to like MPA plus JavaScript, or DHTML, which was the same cycle. It improved a bit the user experience. Then the developer experience with jQuery got better. It always, like, take a dip and then goes up, like the developer experience, because we have a learning curve to understand the patterns of this new technology. And when it reaches a certain point, the developer experience, the user experience goes down. So when the user experience goes down is when we have another innovation. So that's after the DHTML era. So we had like static HTML, MPAs, and DHTML, and then or dynamic HTML, and then we moved to the SPAs era, which began with Flash, development, with like it was called Rich Internet Applications, which then became SPAs with JavaScript. And around from like 2006 till 2016, like 10 years, we had this SPA era, where instead of loading and waiting for each page, you could like load the entire app at once and have a desktop like experience, right, where you can navigate between stuff, and also you preserve state between page transitions. So user didn't, on the UX side, didn't have to refill their multi-part form again if they go back and forgot something. The old timers here know how annoying that was, to fill some insurance company multi-part form and wanted to kill everyone after, like, missing all of these fields. So basically, um, um, in that part, like until like what happened in those 10 years, we had this learning curve, right? Or as developers, we started with I'm jumping to 2012, around 2012, when we had this innovation era after, like, Steve Jobs decided to kill Flash, so people moved away from Flash to,
Was it 2012? It
no,
feels like
it
it was
was,
a couple years ago.
yeah, it was 2010 when he announced it. 2011
Wow.
started like in the era of innovation around JavaScript, because it
Mhm.
was mainly jQuery and maybe Tools and Dojo and stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
we saw stuff like Backbone and Knockout appearing in, and Angular JS started in like got to 1.0 at the middle of 2012. And then we started this era of Angular JS, and then React started in 2013, I think, and like it got more traction. And again, we had like lots of issues there, but mainly it was because of the developer experience. All the innovation that happened there was partially to improve the user experience, but most of it was, I'm writing all this code and it's not maintainable and all that stuff. So let me introduce a simpler concept with, like, maybe JSX, or maybe, like, stuff like that, or less complexity and all that stuff, right? 2016, was the year that server side rendering got back into fashion with Next.js and Angular Universal, and and Vue became more popular, and Next, and the innovation started happening there. Why? Because the user experience, as app became bigger, we added more and more JavaScript, with, like, npm blew up, and now we could, like, install packages from npm to use in our client side application. And then we got to megabytes of JavaScript applications, and the user experience was like degraded over time. So we realized, okay, there was something back in the day with server-side rendering where we could render on the server and just serve the HTML, and then worry about the JavaScript or load the JavaScript. So search engines could see something, and also users could see something. So basically, that was the solution then. And then hydration was a technique that got introduced. So after you serve, for example, in Next, you serve, the first HTML page. It's not interactive until JavaScript gets loaded and the framework gets, replayed, or executes on the client side to add the interactivity points, like the event handlers and all that stuff. So that was 2016. So and that was the start. But in recent years, it got more and more popular with Next and Remix and other, and SvelteKit and Solid Start now, which is more like from 2021. But all the meta frameworks, okay, or the hybrid frameworks that starts on the server and continues on the client. And that was, again, to solve the user experience. Now the boom um in um in recent, like, technologies, they are not new. Like Svelte is not new, Vue is not new, Solid is not new.
That's right.
They're just got more popular in recent years, because I feel that on the developer experience side, for example, Solid maybe introduced a more developer friendly way to handle change detection, or, like, state changes, or state management with reactivity. And but if you pay attention, Svelte and Solid, for example, started to tackle the user experience problem, to provide a faster rendering framework. But because they didn't have the baggage and all the requirements of a more veteran framework, they could, like, innovate more quickly on the developer experience side. So there's, like, a cost of being popular, then you have to make sure you're not introducing too many breaking changes, or, like, changing the model. Although and sometimes you don't have resources even to work on the new innovative way. So this is the evolution that we got. And now This was the context. And now we are in this era, and you see a lot of people talking about it, where there's like something in the air, like there's a transition happening, right? Where I feel that we are now back in. So we had 6 years of trying to improve the user experience, and we hit a local maximum with like, okay, there is so much we can do on the server side, rendering just like the initial HTML, like a dumb HTML, but then we still have to pay the cost of like introducing all this JavaScript. So we hit a local maximum on the user experience. On the developer experience, we are still innovating, but we got to a better point, right? It's more like we have patterns, we have like, a large, community around like the popular tools and ecosystem. But it's very hard to innovate on the user experience side until Qwik. Like this was the realization. And why? If we take this patterns, and we can see that the user experience degrades as the developer experience increases, and then it switches. So the user experience, like with new innovation, increases, but the developer experience like takes a dip and then increases, and then the user experience goes down again. This is the recurring pattern. If we project it to the future, something will cause the user experience to go up now. Like some innovation will do that. It won't be just a JavaScript framework. It also stuff that happens on the server side, edge computing and edge functions. Lots of solutions, but basically things are going to a more like how can we improve the user experience side, and things like core vitals from Google affecting SEO ranking and conversions and all that stuff, and ad cost. These are driving the innovation on the search engine facing apps. Okay, anyone who cares about search engine optimization, and usually when this affects these companies, who any saving in the initial loading time or in the user experience, equals to millions in the bottom line. um, the companies there put resources on uh, contributing back to the community, hiring more people from the community of these like certain solutions, investing in open source tools, and such. And then we see a move from the non-search engine thing apps, like all the apps behind login, who don't really care about the search SEO rankings and all that stuff, start to move. Why? Because a lot of the focus, is happening on the baggage-free frameworks that are innovating on the UX side. So like a new technology like Qwik, for example, who can afford, because it's still in beta, afford itself to take the best ideas, the most popular ideas from all the frameworks in terms of what got adopted, or by the majority, and got like the best user experience. For example, like JSX got the most popular usage from all the other frameworks. Reactivity with signals, and got popular with Solid first, and then with other frameworks. You see, you take all of this and then innovate on top of it and introduce something that all the other frameworks cannot do. We'll get to with Qwik. Then you have like a formula. When I project it to the future, I see like a trend happening of, okay, the first companies will use Qwik, gain those UX benefits, will start a trend of other companies wanting to be on par, like to match the same experience. They put more investment into it, and then you'll start seeing more and more developers migrating over to this, and more talk about this new innovative thing. Plus Qwik specifically has this innovation factor that excites, that what I'm saying excites developers, because after a long period in the front end development world and JavaScript world, we're now starting to talk about new concepts and not the same old let's build a component with just a different syntax. So
Yeah.
that's the context of why I got excited about Qwik, and we didn't even talk about yet what in Qwik got me so excited and thinking, okay, this is the new generation.
Yeah, we can go to that in a second, but it's interesting that you say, you talk about the DX, the developer experience and the user experience piece, because it can sometimes be taken for granted just how far the web has come as far as not just user experience but capability. I mean, I've been around on the web since very early on, and I remember what the pages used to look like back in the day. I remember my GeoCity sites and the types of things we were accomplishing, and now the types of experiences that people are demanding both as users and as companies that are trying to create them. They expect a certain level of capability. And I think that raises the barrier to entry for any web developer to create a competitive or interesting web experience. And I think that's what a lot of these frameworks were battling against, is the developer experience that enabled people to actually get through the door and compete with massive teams of people at Google, at Facebook, at wherever else. Who am I working at, my local bank, working on their website, trying to make something where people go, well, I saw on Facebook they can do this. Why can't you do this on your site? And so
Yeah.
these tools enabled them to do that. But you're exactly right that as they started throwing developer experience and allowing more people into the community, there were more of these like little workarounds we had to remember. Like, oh, you
Yeah.
have to remember to set the location in your router so that the back button in your browser really works. And you have to remember to prevent default on your forms so you don't cause your page to go haywire. And, you start building up all these little workarounds. And I think what maybe is the part that is both a user experience boon and I would argue a developer experience boon is that it feels like the next generation of frameworks is actually re-embracing the platform, but not capitulating to the platform, but reintegrating it from first principles and kind of. I've saw this a lot with the remix community. I love it because I'm as guilty of this as anybody else. We've been in frameworks for so long, you forget as you relearn what forms actually do, or what all these different parts of the platform actually do and how they actually work, and how these frameworks don't have to fight against it. So I feel like that, and I don't know if you agree, but I feel like that's part of what's driving both the user experience boon with the next generation of libraries and honestly innovations on the existing frameworks. Let's not say that like Angular and React and Vue are doing nothing to embrace this moving
Of course,
forward.
and that's a great point. That's a great point because the way I see it, it's not like when you have in the beginning of the spa era, you had like smaller frameworks which didn't have lots of like large core teams and lots of investment behind that. And part of what made AngularJS successful is because Google was sponsoring it and was behind it, and also what made React super popular was that the fact that we had like a Facebook behind it. Then we start seeing a shift, like with Vue, we start seeing a shift of like more community-led frameworks, and then with Svelte, and then with Solid, and then with others. Now with Astro, and you saw like a different story starting to happen there with community, led frameworks starting to pick up more and start to provide an alternative that companies actually feel safe to use because of the power of the people leading the initiative, like their experience and the way they handle stuff, plus the community that was built around it, the ecosystem, the support, the Stack Overflow questions, and all that stuff. So regarding that, all the current frameworks, the big ones, Angular, React, Vue, and all the rest are in Next and Remix and such will still innovate. They won't like say, "Oh, there's a new generation, so let's close the shop and bye everyone." No, these are super smart people who are working on these frameworks, which I personally know, and they're looking as well as everyone else on all the the solutions that are upcoming, and figuring out ways to incorporate. But I didn't see anyone of the major frameworks saying, "Oh no, this is not the future. We'll stick with what we have, and that's it." Okay, nobody's saying it. Even you saw the if you saw the keynote from ngconf, you saw Sarah Dresner, which is also super smart, friendly, and experienced, saying we're looking at innovations with, like, for example, stuff like resumability from Qwik, or stuff like like signals from Solid, or everybody's looking at it. And that's what exciting about it, and that's why I'm trying to promote this. We're all in this JavaScript game together, and not like we are better than you, because we all push each other to innovate for the better of everyone, for the users and the developers. And going back to first principles with like the web fundamentals, that's the job of the framework authors to push that. That's what Remix push for, with progressive enhancement, for example. And I feel that this is like, that's what the requirement or the restriction that you have from edge, running on the edge. You need to embrace the web platforms and the platform capabilities and such. So we're seeing it from the framework side. But I want to get to talk about, like, in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we build this up, that we teased about and why, and like all that stuff, but we didn't say what is so innovative about Qwik, and how it is opening up like a new generation of web frameworks. So I'd like to say it this
Yeah, please.
before we forget it. Okay, so it took a while to figure out how to explain it, because when you have new concepts, it's challenging often. But Mishko and I think Steve had this great metaphor of how Qwik is different, that everyone could relate to. Basically, it's the same. It's the difference between video downloading and video streaming. So back in the day, when you wanted to watch a movie, you had to download the entire file in order to watch the movie, right from the beginning. You
Legally, of
cannot,
course. Legally.
legally, of course, not like torrents and stuff like that. But not, then we had like sites like YouTube and all that stuff that popularized streaming. So you could stream, you can go to the end of the movie and start playing from like there, and not like wait for the entire thing to load and stuff like that. That's the innovation that Qwik brings for JavaScript. So I started coining this term JavaScript streaming, which is not a real term up until now. We have HTML streaming, we have data streaming, but we don't have JavaScript, like parts, a chunk of the JavaScript application being streamed to the browser. And that's the major capability that Qwik brings to the table, which basically allows you to take, just like you can take a 10 gigabytes video file and stream it with just like 1 megabyte of video, or whatever you need to see in that point in time. You can take a 100 megabyte application, no matter how big it is, and just stream it to the user just in time, uh, when it needs to look at the certain page or interact with a certain button or stuff like that. Now, an important thing to know here is that when I'm talking about streaming, with streaming you have buffering, right? So it's not like you're waiting after each second for the video to load. You are buffering on a separate thread while you're seeing the video, right? The same happens with Qwik, because a lot of people, when they learn about Qwik, and it's partially for because of the explanation in the early days of Qwik, they're thinking about lazy loading. They're thinking about, okay, you don't anything, you just up front, you're just seeing the server side rendered HTML, okay? But then when you click on a button, then it will download the code for that button, like lazy load that code. And it's not really what happened. If that happened, then it will be the worst user experience ever, because on every interaction, users would need to wait, right? So the same thing with buffering of video happens in Qwik with buffering of JavaScript chunks. So when the app loads, Qwik behind the scenes, using a service worker, which is a separate thread, start to prefetch all of the possible interaction points of this page to the cache. And then when the user actually interacts with like a button, it only executes that code that is already on the client, on the browser. So comparing to like if we go back to the video downloading metaphor, what happens in all the solutions currently, other than Qwik and maybe like Marco, which is by eBay, which is also very innovative, and and I, uh, I saw like a lot of talks and stuff about how version 6 of Marco is going to be also with the same streaming capabilities, or like buffering and stuff like that that Qwik has. Um, but all the solutions today basically do the video downloading stuff. Even if it's like you divide the video into 3 parts, or like lazy loaded routes, you still basically need to, before the user can interact with the page, you need to download the whole app, and then the whole app need to execute or to run on the client to figure out all the event listeners and all that stuff, so it will be interactive. What Qwik is doing is allowing you to not do that, and to actually, it's render page on the server, it already renders it as it was the browser. Okay, this is what happens with server-side rendering. You run it on the server with a fake DOM, or with like to create the output HTML that you need to create in order to send it. But Qwik is smart enough to know how to take a snapshot of the memory of that point in time, all the event listeners, all the state, all the possible interaction points, and serialize it into the HTML itself and send everything like a virtual machine. You pause it and you can send the virtual machine file to another computer and resume it. You send, like, the virtual machine is basically this HTML file that you send to the browser, and it's starting to fetch and buffer all the stuff in the background, and it's fully interactive with all the knowledge. You don't need to execute even one line of JavaScript in order to make it, because everything is serialized in the HTML. And that capability is the new generation. I feel that in 2-3 years, everyone will work this way. Everyone will, it's just like Netflix killed Blockbuster. Right? So all the major frameworks, I feel, will have to find a way to support this capability, and not. So we're seeing it like with frameworks like Astro, which became more known in 2021 because they released 1.0, and basically they tried to solve it with and they are solving it with introducing the concept of islands. So you basically mark stuff on your HTML or template to mark, okay, which can be lazy loaded or deferred, and that way you have a more fine-grained lazy loading, and not by route but by parts of the page. Now, we talked about the developer experience and user experience. Qwik allows you to do the island thing automatically out of the box. So you need to know, or to do like we said, the manual configuration of stuff. Just gives you all of this capability out of the box. Of course, you have restrictions that you don't have in other frameworks, or what you can do or not in terms of like how to develop. But if you follow the rules, you get everything out of the box, and the code looks very similar to what you see in other frameworks like React or stuff like that. So if we think about the graph of developer experience going down and the user experience going up, or vice versa, the user experience going down and the developer experience going up, Qwik, I feel, for the next period of time, is actually making them both go up and making the path of least resistance for the developers, the path of also of best performance for the users. So developers under pressure and under deadline don't need to remember to configure this part as an island or as a lazy loaded route or as it just automatically. And I feel that what we value the most as developers are laziness is laziness, right? So if we can be lazy on stuff and don't think and just focus on what we need to do, that's the best thing. So that's why I feel Qwik is marking like the next generation. I feel like in the future all of the frameworks will have to adjust, and it would be interesting to see the next couple of years unfolding this way. And I'm still other frameworks helping. I'm still for Angular. I'm still providing feedback and helping out and wanting to see Angular succeed. And I know that they're working behind the scenes, are changing the reactivity model, improving the developer experience. So I would like to see, and we as a team in Qwik would like to see all the ecosystem move forward, and that's why we're collaborating and helping each other. And it's not it's not competitive, it's collaborative. And that's anyway, that's the what I want to.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I think anybody that heard Mishka talk about this over the last couple of years has probably heard this whole conversation of resumability and hydration as sort of the core selling point of Qwik, and I think that's still correct. But I think, and you've sensed this as well, that it's one of these things that, again, if you sit down with Mishka and you get a chance to talk to him and he gives you the actual whole pitch, everybody I've ever seen come out of that conversation is a believer. They go,
Yeah.
that is really cool. But I think sometimes it struggles to go across the whole community because as a concept, people sort of look at resumability and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, hydration, it's server-side rendering, and then I have stuff on the front end. Okay. Or they think of, this intelligent splitting pieces and these boundaries and these containers, and they say, well, yeah, I've had lazy loading for a long time. And it's got to be really hard to kind of go into a term which was broad and now have to inject gradations of it and say, yes, let's talk about the idea of hydration and resumability, but now there's going to be different steps and different ideas inside of that. Because one of the things that was super exciting to me when I started seeing Qwik was there's a part where you talk about Qwik, and they're like, is Qwik static site generation? Is it server-side rendering? Is it client-side, SPA? And basically the documentation just says yes. and it can kind of be all those through kind of the magic of what resumability is, which is kind of just this ability to just grab everything you have right now and walk somewhere else with it, and then just pick up from where you left off. And that's powerful. It's different than what we had. It's not that we haven't had versions of that, but and to have that without the developer having to do a bunch of configuration. Like if you go and you look at what Qwik code looks like next to somewhat equivalent React code, you're going to say, this makes sense to me on a conceptual level. Like this fits my mental model. There are a lot of similarly named constructs, a little bit of new syntax here and there, but this feels very familiar. And you're like, where is the magic? Where do I have to know where to put the new magic? Where do I say this is the resumable part, or this is the container, or this is the whatever? And that is the other part of the magic, which is just how much happens in the quick loader and the optimizer that you will just never need to know about, or at least you don't have to know about, as long as you're just using it correctly and using the syntax correctly. I don't know if you can speak to that. I mean, like these topics, again, it's one of these things that once you've been read in, it's great. But I'm sure you encountered a lot of people that they say, yeah, it's kind of like that the joke, when your mom says, we have resumability at home, and it's like resumability at home is hydration. So you speak to that as you trying to reprogram people's minds and kind of expand their understanding or their ability to think that there is maybe more nuance to these concepts that you're trying to sell people on.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So I've been teaching for a lot of years, trying to simplify stuff for web developers, and the lesson learned from all these years of how to explain new concepts is basically to map them to what people already know. And when you create this map, it's much easier. So, for example, something like resumability, which is can be a scary word to anyone who is not familiar with it yet and not understanding, okay, maybe it's cool, but why do I need it? Like, I already have all the tools that I need in my current framework. I already have, a good enough performance. I can do the lazy loading. I can, like, why do I need to add this friction to my life now and to learn all these parts? Compare that, like what we just talked about, like, comparing the video downloading and the video streaming. It's easier to see why the video streaming changed the entire industry. So even if you don't, and most of the, like I said, apps behind login will probably won't, switch to Qwik in the following year or something like that. The search engine facing apps are starting to now switch to Qwik and start to do the POCs and, to measure the benchmarks, and everybody is getting like wonderful, like amazing results in terms of like the core web vitals compared to other solutions. They are getting hooked on it. um but it's easy even for the search, like the apps behind the login developers. um it's easy to see why this is an, like, an industry shifting, technology, that even if it's not relevant for the next 6 months to 12 months, it is relevant to start and get familiar with these concepts, because this will be the future. Just like about ES6, when everybody was on ES5, right? So we the lectures were about like what are modules and what is import, and which now we take for granted, right? So in the future, people will understand, like, maybe they will understand the concept of resumability, but they will actually, I feel, we'll talk about like how everybody will switch from being like a front end developer only or client side developer to be aware of what is running on the server, and won't ever run again on the client because it's not needed. And how you can how does it actually work behind the scenes, what is cool about it, and all that stuff. So that's why I'm encouraging, people who need it now, jump on it, start doing your POC. People who are just interested in it, go watch the free course on quickschool.com, or on, probably we'll have links on the official doc site. Go watch the recent lectures and play with it and understand, like, the concepts behind it. um Again, this is, on the JavaScript fatigue stuff, I feel that out of all the other cool new innovations, this is a groundbreaking one, that needs to get the attention. That's why I personally got involved, and less sleep and all that stuff. That's why I believe in.
One of the things that I think the community writ large, at least if you're coming from the SPA frameworks, and sort of into the modern approaches, whether it's Remix or Qwik, or any of them, is there used to be this idea of front end frameworks, back end frameworks, and now I don't know if we have an official name for the rest that are kind of an omni end or a mid end. I think people are losing
Hybrid.
track of what is server, what is client. I think this comes up a lot with routing. People just aren't sure anymore if routing is client side, if it's server side, if it can be both. It depends. So, what does Qwik say about this? Like, how should Qwik developers think of the server and the client and routing? I mean, I know this gets into a bit of QwikCity, which we haven't defined definitively here, but like, how should people understand where their code is executing, and do they need to know where their code is executing, I guess?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Basically, just to set the stage, QwikCity, for anyone coming to Qwik, it's just you can think about it as the routing mechanism, just like the Angular router. Okay, you have the QwikCity for routing. Now, difference is that QwikCity, just like other meta frameworks, is out of the box give you the ability to do file-based routing, meaning instead of like configuring some configuration object, routing configuration object, you just use the file and just like create new index.tsx files and inside of their folders, and they are automatically routed to that point. Now, in the future, the way we see stuff, and the way I see like the standard in the future will be like, is that any point of the application in the future, when you will load it, any route in the application will get server-side rendered by default. And for static uh, documentation side blogs, stuff that don't need to preserve state between page transitions, or don't really care about that stuff, it will remain like multi-page apps, MPAs, meaning every page will get server-side rendered with its own context, let's say. But for majority of apps, and part of the trends of these patterns of the past is that we're not going back. It's not like we're going back before SPA to the old days of MPAs. We still want to preserve the abilities of SPAs, which mean preserving state between page transitions, and also to provide this seamless desktop-like experience to using our dashboard application, or our rich interactive application. So that's why in the future I think that every page, every route on the application will be server-side rendered by default to maximize the to make the loading time instant. And then from that point it will become this spa-like framework, but it's going to be like a hybrid, and that's part of the idea behind React server components. Is the same idea of like, instead of now these days with spas, you download the entire app or you lazy load the next route as JavaScript, so you need to still execute it and all that stuff. With the new way of doing things, you will the next route or the next sub route on your page, you will render it also on the server side, and will get this rendered pieces to the client side as like with the same buffering mechanism. And then from then on you will have a spa-like experience, but utilizing the same mechanism for the initial page load, but for each sub route navigation. And that way you'll get the best of both worlds, and you will have this routing, and it will be part of the, again, the standard way of developing. So instead of just writing a link, you use like a link component or something like that, and from that point on you have a spa like application, but behind the scenes the framework is doing all the heavy lifting to provide the instant loading capabilities and such. So that's how I see like so developers will have to be aware of what happens on, like, if you can access a database code, okay, on your component code, you need to be aware that this is happening on this, or this function is happening on the server. But other than that, the routing, all the stuff, I think will be transparent to the like developer won't have to really think about it.
Is that the partially the magic of containers there, with the routing piece and the being able to move things out? Is that where that comes in? I mean, again, another term we haven't
You're
completely
talking about
defined, but
quick containers. So containers is a different concept that
okay.
basically opens a way for basically doing the promise of microbands, but in a
Yeah.
way that works. um, so
Well,
so and that's a whole other topic that it's more on the advanced side now, but we're seeing companies wanting to utilize this capability, which basically gives you the ability to break out part of your application, part of your page, into
sure.
multiple separate applications, that you can basically render on the server, cache the rendered part on the server, and reuse parts in multiple websites that use the same piece of micro front end, let's say. And that way you maximize even your caching ability on the server. But that's a more extreme use case, which will benefit large sites or even content management systems and stuff like that, that serves lots, like 100, I don't know, like a million websites with their system, and then they can reuse like certain parts from the same cache.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to preserve all the state inside of the HTML, which currently is the that only Qwik has, opens up the door for this type of super advanced caching abilities that allows, because you have everything just like a virtual machine, you have everything inside of the HTML, so you can reuse it in smarter ways, where currently now you can't, because you need to hydrate the application or like to rebuild the entire state on the client. So
Yeah.
that's where what containers basically opens up. But again, it's a more advanced topic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also remains to there are more work to be done on that. So I'm guessing this will be after 1.0
The reason
will
I
announce.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up is just because, the routing story as you're describing it, and I feel like this is becoming more true, is also, again, going back to the topic we said at the beginning, which is that part of the rise of these new frameworks is that they embrace the platform. And I think you see the platform solving this similarly with the page transitions API. Like the
Mhm.
base browsers and the platform, the people that are working on the platform itself, like realize that the hard cut of a server side render or of a server side rendered route, or even going to fetch a static page is jarring, and that is going to forever be a sticking point. And so even the platform is having this idea of going to the server, getting static content, but then slotting it into an existing still rendered piece, but it's still acting, and not just acting but being a full page transition. And I'll be honest, I'm still trying to put my mental model back together for a lot of this. I think a lot of people are going to need a moment to embrace this. But it is really exciting to think about that. Like, that was part of the reason we got rid of the server, was because of page transitions. The idea that we can get the server back and keep clean transitions, I think, is just, it's not just Qwik, but it sounds like it is part of Qwik. Is it just such an exciting part of upcoming web development?
Yep. Yeah. The way to think about it, and this is the research, that was done by the React team with the React server component. This was the goal, to mesh these two, platforms with the client and the server, to provide this seamless transition between, like a spa like transition, but server side rendered stuff, to improve, the loading times. But the way I see it, React server components opens up a way do that. Qwik has it by default, just like the islands opens up a way to do less work, but Qwik has it by default, meaning automatically, meaning you don't have to think about it. So that's why I'm thinking, okay, there's like improvement, new generation, like MPAs to spas, new generation, spas to resumable apps, or like JavaScript streaming, you know. So JavaScript downloading to JavaScript streaming. This is the next transition that I see, and part of it will be to provide these seamless transitions between pages, this spa-like application and user experience, but with all the capabilities of making, because part of the local maximum that we reach with just like spas or even hydration based technologies is that, you know, the user devices uh, can have so many cores, that can run, and execute large amount of JavaScript in one thread, because JavaScript is single threaded, right? So there's like a maximum ability that we reached, and the more JavaScript we're adding, the more load we're adding to those devices. So the and you cannot stop the innovation. So you cannot stop adding more JavaScript because you need this capability. Like you said, people expect, like user expect that you have this like rich interactivity with the application, all this stuff. So you cannot prevent that. So the solution won't be stop or adding innovation to your app or to your user experience. The solution can like must be don't ship JavaScript and don't execute JavaScript until it's so don't ship the whole JavaScript just to load the page, and don't execute and only execute the JavaScript that you need on this specific moment. And that way you free up the thread, the CPU, the GPU, everything to give this interactive. And again, I would say it again and again, Qwik is the only from now that on the automatic, and I feel in the future all of the frameworks will have to do something like this.
Well, wonderful. Well, we have walked people to the front door now of the deeper knowledge, and certainly we could keep going for 3 hours on this or longer still. But
Mhm.
where can people that are now inspired, or people that have been playing around with Qwik and this excites them, where can they find other Qwik developers? Where can they learn a little bit more? Where can they get plugged into the community?
Yeah. So first of all, we have our Discord. If you go to the Qwik Docs, you see like a community page. It's going to be merged soon, like a larger community page with all of the groups. We have like groups on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the social platform, Reddit and stuff like that. But the main community chat is on Discord. You can join there, introduce yourself, ask questions. We have wonderful people from the community, like I said, like the Qwik heroes. If you are excited about opening a community in your local town about Qwik, reach out to us as well. Reach out to me or Yoav. And we have the Qwik community leaders program, right? That we help and support and encourage people. And we already have people in France, people in England, people in other countries that are opening up meetups and user groups and stuff like that. So that's amazing to see. So yeah, so I would say go to the official website under the community. You'll see all the opportunities to come and contribute. We Qwik is still, young at this point. We have lots of cool, exciting community projects. I started, a UI component library called the Qwik UI, and I work on it with great people from the Qwik community to try and provide like the first, native Qwik UI library. So it won't be a blocker for people to adopt Qwik. So they will have the best possible UI component library with headless components and with Tailwind style and material style and all that stuff that we're used to from all the other frameworks. So that's a great opportunity to contribute as well, and also to contribute to anything. We promote like the Boy Scout, Girl Scout rule, where leave the place better than you found it. So if you find like something is missing in the docs, or we encourage you and we'll help you get up and running with contributing to the core and to the docs and such. So lots of opportunities to join and help and play around it and ask questions and such.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it in depth here, but the Qwik CLI is very mature for its age. If you say how do I use this technology with Qwik, there's probably a quick add command to do it. So you'll be surprised. It's a very feature rich CLI, again for the length of the time that it's been around. Real
Yeah.
quick as we close out here, when is QuickCon, and are you going to be doing a rap at QuickCon?
So that's a good question. Not sure when will be like the official QuickConf happening. I'm guessing more around like when 1.0 will be announced,
Okay.
or maybe after. And that's another question. Probably like people are asking. When is 1.0 is going to get released, and that's a magical question. Just like when back in the day of Angular, when is Angular 2 is going to get released, like the conferences, the core team got asked this question. I'm to answer the second question first, because it affects, like, the first question. The most important thing for 1.0 of Qwik is to make sure the developer experience is amazing. It's not just good, it's even better. It's as equal or better than what people are used to. So, and that's a very, like, an emphasis that we have. So this beta period is for collecting all of the feedback, making sure all the breaking changes are behind us. We have, great docs, we have great, tutorials, great courses, great, stuff to get people up and running with Qwik, and to also establish patterns for larger scale applications of, like, state management and stuff like that. So it will take a couple of months at least, I feel. Again, I cannot, like, say for certain when, because it's basically depends on the feedback from the community. But the point is not to get into a scope creep of feature, richness that will take us like 4 years to ship 1.0. I feel that most of the core concept and stuff are there, and are, like, easy to work with. So once that will happen, I feel like, at least it will take a couple of months, but I feel that this year will be the year of 1.0 for Qwik. And after that, we'll see, like, the conferences. And we already have, like, a Qwik polling in November, which is going to be awesome. So in terms of a rap song, we'll see. Maybe I'll try to do referencing the NG rap that I did in 2017 in NGConf. So I try to, do new stuff every time. So I'll probably do, like, a polka song, or, like, I don't know, like something like
There we
that.
go.
But yeah.
Well, you know what?
Stay
If
tuned.
people can wait 15 years for George R. R. Martin to release Winds of Winter, I think we can be patient until 1.0 is ready. So take your time.
Yeah, it won't take 15 years. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this Modern Web podcast. Of course, thank you to our guest, Shai. As always, the conversation does not stop here. You can find Shai on Twitter at Shai_Reznik. That's SHAI_REZNIK. Shai, are you doing Mastodon as well? Do you want to point people to, or have you not gotten in
I
on that yet?
tried. Yeah, I tried that, but I was afraid of the whole model of, if this server is going down, what happens to all my, you know, how do you call it? Tweets? I don't know what to call it there, but
Hoot.
uh,
Oh, gosh. Now we're showing. Yeah, we're
tweets.
showing. We're cool. Yeah.
We're cool, guys. We're cool. Trust us. But no, you can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and on HiResIO, or Shai at HiResIO, if you need, like, help with, like, making sure you sleep well at night, as I like to say. Test right, sleep tight. So I have, like, I got your back on, the test effective development side, and getting your team on board. So check out the zero critical bugs bundle.
There we go.
But yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter and such, and Discord
All right.
now.
As for me, you can find me online at RoboCell. For the podcast, you can find us online at moderndotweb.com or on Twitter at modern.web. Hope to see you all next time. Have a great day.